So, good evening, everyone. You're very welcome to tonight's live webinar, Discover the Bachelor of Arts at UCC. My name is JP O'Connor. I'm the Recruitment Project Officer with the College of Arts, Celtic Studies and Social Science. Our first speaker tonight is Dr. David Fitzgerald, who is the Programme Director for the Bachelor of Arts. David will give an overview of the course and explain how students can design their own degree according to the subjects they specialise in. Our second speaker then is Alicia Rogers. Alicia is a final year arts student currently pursuing a joint honours degree in economics and sociology. She will explain her reasons for choosing the Bachelor of Arts. Alicia will also describe her ongoing journey through the course and where she hopes to end up after graduation. Our third speaker is Orla Murphy. Orla graduated from the Bachelor of Arts with a joint honours degree in English and Politics. Orla currently works as the Special Communications Advisor to the Secretary General for the Organisation of Security and Cooperation in Europe and is now based in Vienna. She previously held senior roles across political affairs, global health and diplomacy within the United Nations. Orla will speak tonight about her own experience of the Bachelor of Arts degree. And she will also illustrate how her career path shows the wide range of opportunities open to arts graduates. The webinar will then conclude with a short Q&A session where we will answer any questions you may have about the degree. So just to let you know that tonight's webinar will be recorded and put on our YouTube channel in the next few days. So I'll hand you over to Dr. David Fitzgerald now.
Thanks very much, JP. I'm just going to put up my slides. What I'm going to try to do is, I taught Orla once, but I'm sure talk about it later on. Orla knows I'm capable of speaking a million miles an hour. I won't go a million miles an hour. I'll go about 1,000 miles an hour, though, because I'm just really keen to get to the Q&A bit and obviously to hear from our graduates and our students rather than me boring you to death with slides. But look, thanks everyone for coming on this evening. It's a great privilege to be able to speak to you about the BA. My primary role as vice head of college, I oversee about 20 different programs, but this one is sort of special, I suppose, in many ways. It's the flagship program of the College of Arts, Celtic Studies and Social Sciences. It's the biggest degree in the university by a long shot, and it's one of the longest running degrees in the university. It's been around since the university was founded. I think we're hitting 180 years old this year, and I think that these subjects have been taught since the founding of the university, which I think it's a really good time to be talking about these things. So I suppose the first thing to say is, like, what are the arts and humanities and social sciences? What do we actually do in the round? And I suppose really fundamentally what we're interested in is human beings, right? That's our primary object of study. Humans, their thoughts, their histories, their places, their societies, their structures, their cultures. And that obviously, as you can see from the list below, encompasses a huge range of field studies, so literature, psychology, languages. But I suppose we all cluster around thinking about the human and the social. That's what we do that is distinctive from the hard sciences or the medical sciences or even law in some ways. And I think I'll speak more about this later on, but I think what's really important to note, I suppose, about what we do, because as you can see, and I'll show you on the next slide, the huge variety of what we do. Like, there's a variety there, there's a huge range and a huge sort of menu of choices, but I think we all do similar things, and why we're grouped together. And I would say the things we teach tend to be I would say they have a very long shelf life. They don't kind of expire quickly. These are things that will stand with you sort of for, I think, until, I was going to say until the day you die, but I think really for most of your career and your life, and they're really genuinely lifelong skills. So we can think of things like critical thinking. We can think about how do we solve problems. Research is hugely fundamental to what we do, and we're a very research active college. A colleague of mine today just won a European Research Council grant for, I think, €2 million. It's so you get, these are the sort of people who teach you. And I think what's interesting is we're also all really interested in clarity of writing. We really care that you can write well, and that's increasingly important in the world we live in, that your communication is fluent, that you're clear. And then also what we're also, I think, good at is we're also very good at situating things. So when you're dealing with a challenge in your life, you can understand the cultural, economic, or social context. And that's actually really important, because we don't solve decisions in the abstract in a black box. We solve them in the world we live in. And what the humanities and social sciences are really good at, I think, is to actually put you in the world and say, here's the world you're living in, here's the way we think about it. So there's a huge range of sort of things that we do, that I think are cut across all our disciplines. So I'll come back to those in a second. But just to show you, I suppose, what choice is there, and JP mentioned at the very start about sort of the flexibility of the degree, and it's quite true. The way it works, I suppose, in just sheer practicalities is it's a 3-year program. There's also 4-year BA International, which allow you to go abroad for a year. When you come in, you don't necessarily need to pick your horse at the very start. You start off with 4 subjects. I'll show you the range of them in a second. You pick those. You have a few weeks then to actually change your mind. So I would recommend go in, sit in any lecture you want of any class you want, and say, actually, do you know what? I thought this was going to be fascinating, but it's not for me. Or vice versa. I had no interest in this topic, but it's really speaking to me. So that's your first year. You do 4 subjects, and then after first year, you then pick 2 subjects. You're saying, okay, I'm going to drop 2 and keep 2. I'm going to specialize in these 2. And then essentially we've sort of 3 flavors. Single honors, which is you specialize very much in one area, with a minor with only 10 credits in another. Major honors, which is, I suppose, a little more balanced. And then I suppose our most popular option would be joint honors. So you get a joint degree in, say, history, English, sociology, economics, and that's quite common. And this is the broad structure of the degree. And then just to show you, I suppose, the sheer breadth of choices we have, there's a huge range here. You might be familiar with a lot of these from secondary school, but we have absolutely, I think I checked, a Maynooth has slightly more than us, but we have more than anyone bar Maynooth in terms of the choice we offer in university. So you got the sort of classics you might know from secondary school: history. I'm a historian. You might get geography, economics. But you also have subjects that you never would have encountered before. Philosophy, sociology is extremely popular, but people don't do it in school. European studies, folklore. So there's a huge range of what you can do. And just to explain the slide to you, you basically can pick one subject. You can pick more than one subject from each group. So we've a whole range of groups, and then you look at the groups and say, okay, well, I'm going to do French, therefore I won't do sociology or vice versa. But the range is still really, really big, and someone calculated the amount of combinations that offers you, and it runs into the thousands, I think. So that's really, I think, important, that choice you have, and that first year you get to look around, see what really you're good at, what interests you, and then you can move on then to specialize in future years. Sorry, I'm going in the wrong direction. We also, I suppose, it doesn't sit within the program structure directly. We also offer work integrated learning opportunities. So if you are really keen to go out into the world and get experience, we have a module which sits as what's called the diploma supplement. So it's a free module you do. You can do it any year of the BA. You can come in first year and do it. You can do second or third year. And what that does is basically it gives you advice and guidance on CV writing, interview skills, and then you will go on. You can go do work experience for a spell as well, and that goes on to the university supports you in that, and then that goes on to your transcript as well. So it's a really good opportunity, I suppose, as you're thinking about what's next, to go out and just dip your toe in the water there as well. So that's something we've been running for a number of years now. It's supported by colleges and the career services. It's a really, really good module. And we usually get a very good uptake every year. But again, you can think about any year of the degree you want when it suits you. You can do that. But I suppose one thing I would always say, and I've said this to JP a few times, that I think we are often I think doing sort of disservice in the arts sometimes, where we sort of talk about flexibility and choice, and we do offer that, and it's a really good thing. But we do actually a lot more than that. I think we offer, I think, really, really valuable things that are really highly valuable employers, and talked about them. But I suppose if you think about the need, and talked about this already, to understand context, to know about national debates, to really grasp them, I also think we're very, very good in a way that LLMs and AI is not, at synthesizing knowledge, to actually read a bunch of things, to read a lot of different diverse sources, and to synthesize them together and actually pull something meaningful out of that. Because you're going to be, and Orla might talk about this in a minute, in the postgraduate world, when you're in the world of work, information is messy, it's incomplete, we make judgment calls, and this degree thing really equips you to do that. And then on the other side of it, you're communicating those complex ideas and data effectively. You're able to actually to boil down that complexity and say something meaningful, not simplistic, but saying something meaningful about it. We do a lot of work as well in a lot of our disciplines about how do you actually analyze your source of information. How can we be critical about that? We can think now, I'm picking on AI this evening, but sort of all sort of the sort of AI slop that's out there, and whatever else. Our graduates tend to be very, very good at parsing these things, because they're trained in reading things properly and closely, and that's a really, really valuable skill. And then the last thing I would say, I suppose, is that a huge amount of our graduates come out fluent in another language. We have a huge range of languages that offer in the degree. I think I think we've 12 of them. If you include Latin and ancient Greek, which I think we teach very, very proudly, and that fluency is really, really useful. And the last thing I will say about fluency, I suppose, is this is something that I won't get into the details, but I've been running kind of a reform project on the degree for a while, looking at what we could do differently in the future, and talking to colleagues across the university. And I remember talking to a colleague in another college who teaches across a whole different bunch of programs. And he said, David, like, your students, he said what's really, really special about them, he says that they are able to use these different lenses, right? That say we might hear in a second about the differences between sociology from Alicia, a sociology and economics. A sociologist and economist will look at the world through a different lens, different way of looking at the world. But the fact that the graduates come up with two of those lenses mean that gives you this really interesting ability to look at something from different angles and see something really interesting. So he sort of pointed out to me that ability to have different lenses, different languages, but literally metaphorically, is a really, really valuable thing, I think, on the degree. So those are things I would sort of focus on that we do really well. I will be really brief in this bit because we have actual live graduates here to talk, but we have a huge range of careers that we offer. We've obviously people go into sort of planning and development, they go into marketing, they go into film, they go into the arts, they go into social work. It's a massive range. And rather than me listing them all out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a literal whistle up tour. I'm not going to talk about each one of them. I'm just going to go through slides of some of our current graduates, and I'll just show you where they are. And it's a really, I think that speaks better than I could to the range of outcomes and where people go. So I'll do that, then I'll shut up and hand it back to JP, and then I'd love to get into the Q&A. But you can see here we've got journalists, we have people working for UNESCO. We have people running very, very important magazines. We've got award-winning poets. We've got people working as professors in Ivy League universities. We have people working as diplomats. We'll hear more of those this evening. We have people working in business. We have people working in editing, council. We have people working in planning, again, journalism. We have people working in even in the business sector, which you might be surprised at. We have people doing really well in various sort of disciplines. Global rare diseases, not known. You wouldn't think that's a humanities job. Actually, it can be and is. So just to go through these graduates, you can see here the huge range of what we offer. I think it's really, really powerful to see that. I think it just shows you, I suppose, that this degree is a gateway to sort of a huge range of places and careers. And I think, we'll hear more in a second, but I think it just shows you where you can go and sort of how many possibilities are open to you through this degree. You're not closing yourself down. I think you're opening yourself up. And look, with that, I'm going to hand over because I want to hear from other people, and I would love to do the Q&A in a second. So I'll stop sharing and then hand back to JP. So thanks.
Thank you, David. Thank you for that overview. Now I'll present the second speaker for tonight. I'll introduce Alicia Rogers. So Alicia, off you go. Give the undergrad perspective on the degree. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Alicia Rogers and I'm going to be talking to you about my CK101 arts journey and hopefully convince you that it's a very good idea. Let me just share my slides there. One sec. So I'm studying joint economics and sociology, and I just want to talk to you how I got here and what I love about this degree. In secondary school, I didn't really have a clear idea of what I wanted to study. I was studying economics and accounting, so I had an interest in the business side of things, but I didn't really want to just focus on that. I wanted to explore my options. So the arts degree appealed to me a lot because there were such a broad range of subjects, like Asian studies or Irish, archaeology. There's so many options, so that I didn't have to just stay in my lane of economics, and I could explore all the other topics that I wanted to do. So in first year, I decided to go with economics, sociology, Irish and Asian studies. Economics because that had always been my plan to study economics, and sociology because everyone had told me that it paired really well with economics, which I found out to be true. So I kept those subjects on for second year. And I suppose I kept on economics because it was more of what I loved in secondary school, how markets worked and how people behaved in economics. With John Constantine, we studied game theory, which explored behavioral economics, how people react, the rational man, as he called him, Spock, or the irrational man, Homer Simpson, which I found hilarious. And then sociology, I suppose, it was just it offered a broad range of how people in society react. We studied sociology of the family, and then we also studied sociology of class, the city, crime and deviance, which was very, very interesting. And I suppose I picked those two subjects mainly because there was a lot of overlap between the two. So in economics, we studied Karl Marx about capitalism and the Capitalist Manifesto, and then Adam Smith with The Invisible Hand and how markets work to better humankind. We studied both of those from different perspectives in economics and sociology. Like David said, we offer like Karl Marx from a sociologist perspective and an economics perspective, which was very interesting to learn about. Like this year, I decided to do medical sociology, which talked about capitalism and health, which again brought us back to Karl Marx. We learned about economics, but we also brought it into like how capitalism influences health, and that brought like a really interesting perspective on it. The assessments for both of them were like very like I found them very fair. Like we had a lot of readings to do for like sociology, and we studied a lot of different perspectives. We could bring those into like our essays or like our in-class essays. And then for economics, we'd have essays on like a specific topic where we could bring our like knowledge into that. And we had MCQs, which allowed us to test our knowledge, and then exams. And it was like all it was a combination of all of those. So it wasn't like all weighted on end of year exam. I suppose next year, what I'm hoping to do with my degree is to do a master's here in UCC of business economics, which is applying economics to the business world. So like a consultant or a wide range of topics, honestly, I'm not too sure yet. Basically, I hope my experience can give you a good idea of one path in the arts degree and how like the subjects can relate to each other and give you different perspectives and give you a wide range of knowledge to continue your learning or get a job in the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alicia. And our third speaker tonight is Orla Murphy, and Orla will give her perspective from a graduate's point of view in relation to the degree. Okay.
Thanks, JP. Thanks for having me. So I will start off by saying I think arts is so good if you're not sure what you want to do, right? And if you're like, oh, everyone knows what they want to be, I really don't know, like, oh, I have to do something. And it's like a proactive step, right? And as David was saying, loads of different subjects at the beginning, like see what feels good. And like, I really will guarantee you will find a lecturer or a friend who will encourage you, even if the subject matter itself doesn't seem exciting to you at the beginning. Like there will be a glimmer that you will be like, yeah, this is it. Like I could really see myself in this class, even if it's not what you envisaged filling out the forms. So I studied English, Irish, history, and politics, and was convinced I would have a joint honours in English and history. I didn't. I did English and politics, joint honours, and I mean, why did I make that decision? I was always really good at English and I was really good at history. They came very naturally to me. I was that weirdo teenager watching primetime. So, you know, like that also made sense. And I liked Irish. And genuinely, like, I have no regrets over any of them. If I could have done like joint honours in the 4 subjects, I would have. I loved it so much. You know, 10 years into working, I really think not a month has gone by where in the UN someone hasn't asked me like, oh, do you speak Irish? And I'm so proud to say, yeah, I studied at a university. Like, am I Gael Gore? No. Can I say I studied at university? Yes, because I did it for a year. And you know, if you want to run for president in the future, it's very useful. And if you laughed at that, you should study politics in UCC. But just to say that the social side of it too, you know, I think it's really nice. If you come in, you're a little anxious, it's a very nice environment because you're not with the same people all the time and you can kind of do your own thing and have like a couple of good friends in different subjects and modules. But then, you know, you can also, there's so many clubs, societies. I joined like everything that didn't require talent, as well as hockey and, you know, kickboxing. Met one of my best friends for life through St. Vincent de Paul. I was like shaking a bucket at him, trying to get him to donate. He did, and we're still best friends. And I think in terms of, you know, I became class rep. That gave me like good experiences with taking responsibility and listening to people's views that maybe I hadn't seen. I think the diversity of people you meet, the idea that you might just have like one module with some people, but then, you know, you go for tea with them, you meet their housemates, you meet their boyfriends, you meet, you know, you get so many friends through arts. And I think Alicia might attest to this, that the arts ball is the most popular ball for a reason, because it's the best crack. And you meet the, you know, like so many people with different viewpoints. And I think that prepares you really well for the world after graduation. So in terms of my next steps, I did the Masters in International Public Policy and Diplomacy, where David was one of my lecturers, and I can, you know, verify he's as good as you would imagine. And then I went fundraising for a year at the Mercy Hospital Foundation. So like event planning with the schools and things like that, and the radiothon that you probably hear of every summer. And then I came back and I did the LLB. And that also reaffirmed that arts was like the right choice for me, because I think I saw that it was a very different culture in law, and it was a much more intense culture. And I remember the first time being in the library and seeing like pages torn out of the books in the law books, right? Whereas like at arts, we would share the books. If someone had it checked out and they had like another 10 days left on the checkout, you would share it with your friend, you know? And I think there's something very nurturing about arts, that if you're maybe a little bit on the immature side, or you're a bit nervous about going into college, like it's a very welcoming space. And I think it's welcoming to like a lot of different people. You know, it's not homogenous in any way. And I think that's really, really nice if you're, again, like maybe a little bit uncertain. To reassure parents, arts graduates do get jobs. And, you know, you'd say, what do you do with an English and politics degree? Well, I was speechwriter to the president of the United Nations General Assembly for a few years. And to touch on what David was saying about the skills we learn, right? So I actually took some notes because, you know, I'm an arts grad, that's what we do. So creative problem solving, cognitive communications, clarity of writing, the ability to contextualize information, synthesizing knowledge, and critical analysis. Those are all things David mentioned. They might sound a little abstract. What do that mean, right? As a speechwriter, I could churn out like 5 speeches a day, easy, you know, and these were delivered at head of state level, like, because I was confident in my writing, I could really quickly like discern from like a 5-page document, okay, what are the 3 key messages here, you know, what's the call to action? The contextualizing that, like, how do we make that matter to the people who are listening to this? How are we going to encourage policymakers and decision makers to take action on what we're talking about? Why should they care? So part of my work when I worked at the Department of Foreign Affairs in New York for Ireland, I created the International Day of Education. So I co-led the negotiations in that with Nigeria. January 24th, pencil it in. And that was, again, like, how do we get countries to sign on and believe in this, and you know, put their resources behind this, and sign a document that says, okay, every year 193 countries will celebrate International Day of Education. And that was, again, how to contextualize this, how to synthesize the knowledge to make it relevant to each stakeholder. You know, then when I was working in Afghanistan, you know, I was liaising with the Taliban, with young women and girls. And again, it's like, okay, well, what's of most interest to each constituent, right? That each stakeholder you're meeting. And I think that all the skills, well, actually, I know that all the skills I got from arts, I still use every day. And I'm not just saying that because I'm speaking to you, but I really believe that. And I said to Alicia before we went live that I would, in a heartbeat, switch places with her. You know, it was the best 3 years. I really enjoyed it. I still have friends, you know, still go to the weddings. You know, one friend is a teacher, and I spoke to her Model UN club. You know, you do keep these friends, but I think more so than that, I think arts gives you a lot of confidence. And it's very easy to disappear into a big group if you need to disappear, but it's also very easy to forge bonds with people in small group tutorials in arts without judgment or without kind of fear for speaking up. And, you know, I think if there's any part of you that is thinking, oh, I might like that, I would say go for it. And the other thing is just, you know, this whole thing, find a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. The reality is, like, if you have an aptitude for history, for Irish, for French, for whatever it is, you know, like, you don't actually have to try that hard to get good grades, right? And what do people want at the end of the day? They want like a really good final grade on your exams and on your degree. And you'll get that if you follow your passions and your, natural talents. And I think, as David, explained, there's so many avenues that you can really choose subjects to do that. So I hope I didn't run over time, but I'll hand back to JP.
That's great. Thanks very much, Orla. That was a great overview of your time during the arts degree and what you've done since. So look, we've now come to the Q&A part of tonight's webinar. If you have any questions for any of our speakers, please use the Q&A function at the top of the screen, and I'll give you a few minutes to get your questions into me, and we can start publishing them then. So this was actually sent in to me earlier by someone who I was speaking to in one of the schools just this week during my travels. So what choice of two subjects most complement each other in the arts degree? David, could you?
I mean, it's an impossible question in many ways, JP. So thanks for giving me an easy one to start with.
Okay.
This is where, genuinely, it just depends on you, right? It really does. Like, you might think that something, let's say, I don't have the timetables in front of me right now. You might think agencies and economics. Where's the connection? Well, my cousin who worked in Shanghai for years and is now in Brussels would say there's a great connection. So in a strange way, it's really up to you and your preferences. You'd be surprised. You can look, there's the classics, and I can go through the data. English history, politics and history, sociology and French. That's all there, but they're really, it just is so open to you, and it really, you will find things that speak to you. And Orla spoke that really well about like Gaeilge all of a sudden being of relevance in her role in New York. I think that's so. In a way, I'm dodging the question, but this because I really do think that there's such a genuine diversity out there, and there's so many different ways you can suit people's personalities and interests that there isn't kind of the perfect combo. There's just so many different ones out there.
Okay, David, thanks for that. We have another question in from Brona. What is the difference between doing the government and political science degree and getting a BA in politics?
Great. I might give that one a go. I know Orla's a graduate of politics. She might have some data. I suppose so. The government political science, as you said, it's a separate degree. You go in through the CEO, and that's what you're doing from day one. They have more modules in political science. They have sort of more modules elsewhere. They have a few business modules, but they are focused from day one. And this is what you're doing, and they offer internships. It's a very, very good program. Whereas the politics program sits within the BA. And therefore you sort of can interact with the subjects a bit more than you can on the BSc Government and Political Science. The other thing to note about politics, the way we do it actually in UCC is very unique, and I think it's really, really positive. Politics in UCC is a combination of three subjects. So history, government politics, and philosophy all collaborate. And we make sure students take classes in each of those. So you cannot get out of the politics program in UCC without doing a philosophy module and learning about political theory, which is really important, or history or vice versa. So they're a little bit different. I would say if you were really, really keen that you're going to go off and become the next Catherine Connolly or whatever else, certainly the government and political science degree is really, really good and worth a look. But I suppose that is the path you are definitely choosing when you do that. Whereas with the arts degree, again, first year you pick whatever you want, and then you can really specialize in politics if you want up to 50 credits, albeit politics done a little bit differently. So I suppose you're making the commitment a bit later with the arts degree, but they're both really, I mean, I've got colleagues in government who are excellent. So that's how I would sort of think of the difference and parse it.
Can I add, JP?
Of course you can, yeah.
I was just going to say also that the studying philosophy as part of politics really helped me in the LLB, because for jurisprudence, it's very philosophy based, and it's not really how you think about the regular law modules. So having that background in philosophy like really helped me, and I got my best marks in jurisprudence that I wouldn't have, I think, if I had gone in straight undergraduate from school into the LLB. And I also think kind of in the UN system, for example, it's more rare to meet people who like a government degree. Like usually people would have a BA politics, particularly if they want to go into academia, which a lot of people working in the UN and government do, because they want to go into that revolving door, especially in the US, that would be a common thing. So I would say the politics might be a little bit more popular, I find, just among peers.
Thank you for that, Orla. We have another question just came in. Can you continue studying psychology for your degree, or is it only first year, a first year only subject?
So this is a really good question and really pertinent. So at the moment, it's important to clarify. At the moment, studies in psychology is first year only at the moment. It's to do with staff-student ratios and accreditation. That won't bore you with the details. So, but what we did agree with them that you do it in first year as sort of a taster, and then if you were going to do a postgraduate conversion course into psychology, those modules then would stand you down the line in that sense. So that's sort of I'm working with them at the moment. It's a first year sort of taster in a sense, and then you can again later on can hang on to those qualifications, but it is unfortunately right now it is for just first year. So I wouldn't want anyone signing up for the BA saying I'm going to do 50 credits of psychology, because you're not, and that's really important to be clear about that. So thanks for that question to clarify.
Thanks, David. Another question came in to us. What are the major differences in doing English through the joint arts degree and doing the singular degree of English?
I'll take this one again.
Sure.
So I suppose a little bit like politics and government politics in that the English degree is more specialised. You get more credits in English. The big difference I would see, apart from just the sheer weight of modules, is the creative writing piece is only in the English degree. Because creative writing, a bit like psychology, you can't do creative writing with a class of 300. It just doesn't work. So they sort of box those off, and those exist primarily within the English degree. So if you're into creative writing, that's a really good degree for that. But I suppose the BA subject, of English is much more what you think about literature, you think about literary analysis and things like that. So I would say the big thing for me is just the creative writing bit actually is not present in the BA because we just couldn't do it for large numbers. For obvious reasons. That's the primary difference. But again, similar to the political science degree, you're kind of picking day one that you're going to do that.
Okay, thank you, David. It's a very specific question. What would be the process of becoming an archaeologist? Presumably, obviously, through the arts degree.
So you have to take archaeology. That's important.
Of course.
You need to take archaeology, and from there, then they're I should say they're a very applied discipline. You do a lot of field work. You go digging in the mud a lot. That's part of the job. And you go through the archaeology degree, you take as many credits as you can, and then afterwards I'm not an archaeologist, so you can check the archaeology department. Often people go straight into working as professional archaeologists for various construction firms, and there are a variety of postgraduate degrees that they offer as well. So you can go on and specialize. For instance, one degree I've been dealing with lately is human osteoarchaeology, which is bones. So if you want to get into almost like forensic stuff in many ways, that's there as a postgrad. But I think the primary thing is go do the archaeology degree, and they're really excellent. I would say it's a medium-sized department, which means it's you get to know them, and they're not tiny, they're not huge either. So you'll know the people there, and they would definitely give you a steer in terms of work experience, where to go next. But I would say archaeologists in particular, it's one of the subjects where there's a very clear through line into the job, which isn't the case for a lot of us. They have that, and they're very good at developing that, I would say.
I can see there's a couple of questions coming through the chat, but I'll just focus on the questions here in the Q&A first. I have another one here, David, that's after coming in. So could you please elaborate further on the professional work experience module PX3001? Is it organized by UCC or the student? Is it normally voluntary or a paid work placement? Can it be taken in each year? So yes, this is something.
No, great question. So you can take it once. So you can take it in each year in the sense that you can do it once only, but you can pick any year you want. It is organized at UCC usually. This is a middle ground in the sense that it's not a block placement, so you're not we don't have 15 or 20 slots held open for PX3001, but we do have good relationships with a lot of different organizations, and we would help you then work with those organizations. Or even if you came to me and said, listen, I really want to do, well, not me, I don't coordinate it. If you came to us and said, I really wanted to work in this sector, we'd say, well, have a think about this, and have you thought about that, and guide you. So there's a combination of, we have a lot of contacts that we would leverage and help you with, and help you prepare. And then also if you came out with a burning passion and said, I really want to do something, we would help you put the onus on you in that sense. In terms of payment, that usually, my understanding is that particular one is mostly unpaid, and that they're mostly in the voluntary sector. So that is something to bear in mind as well. And it also, should say, because it's a diploma supplement, it sits outside your degree. So students do it different times of the year. Sometimes they do it in the spring, sometimes in the summer, but it's not like it's not like a semester-long placement. You're gone from UCC, so it's important to bear in mind in terms of what your commitment, and we would be advising you about how many hours a week to do, because there's a certain amount you need to do. It's not huge, so that's part of the consideration as well. As when you do it, you do it alongside your studies rather than in place your studies. Now that's something to consider with that as well.
Okay. I have another question here from Ryan O'Driscoll. What does the number of credits go towards? I guess Ryan's trying to understand how the credits are broken down year by year.
So yeah, so I suppose to go back, so first year you have 4 subjects, 15 credits. So just to start, this is the basic premise. There's 60 credits in a year. That's sort of what we do. The university undergraduate year is 60 credits. The first year is broken very cleanly into 4 15s, and that's the split. From second year on, then, when you pick your 2 subjects, you either do a combination of 50-10, 40-20, 30-30, and then within that, then each subject will have different requirements. So they will say, for instance, history, we were really keen that you do a history seminar, so 10 credits that would be towards the history seminar. But languages then would say, for instance, they would say a lot of the credits go towards language acquisition, and then other credits go towards culture. So every subject is a little bit different, but within that bucket of credits, we would give them a lot of leeway to design what they need to do. But the basic splits are 4 subjects in first year, 15 each, and then 2 subjects from second year on with a 50-10, 40-20, 30-30 split. So it's reasonably straightforward in that sense.
Okay. Next question. Are the current subject groups likely to remain the same in the near future? It's from Ida.
Great question. So yes-ish. As I'm working at a fairly large scale restructuring in some ways, but for the subject groups, we are looking to bring in, and this is future years, digital humanities are really keen. We have a degree in digital humanities and IT. They're really keen to come aboard with the main BA. That has not been approved yet, so don't take this as will happen, but that's a proposal. In terms of timetable groups, I have some vague hope that we're buying a very fancy new piece of software that will help us with timetabling. And if I can use that, I would like to make the timetable groups a bit more open. At the moment, there's a lot of choice there, but there's restrictions, and I'd like to open that up. I can't make promises, but I would like to open it up more. But in terms of the number of subjects, I think we will add 1 and not lose any. So those will be roughly the same for as far as I can tell for the near future, with the vague hope that we might have a restructured timetable that would allow a bit more choice to people.
Okay, thank you, David. And Oren, he's asked a question. For the Arts International degree, is the location of the international placement chosen by the student or the college?
So I'm not running the BA International, so I'm going to preface that. You would certainly, you would have your preferences, absolutely, and then you would work with the international coordinator to say where you want to go. Obviously, if you're taking French, it would make sense that you go to a French university, and so your language should match the university. We have partner institutions, and that's where you would go. We have a large number of partner institutions, and sort of we would have to then balance. There's always, again, thankfully it's a game. I don't have to get involved in balancing this, but we have to look at student demand, look at places in the partner universities, and do our very best to work with you then to make sure you get where you want to go. But obviously, just to say again, you will be sent somewhere that is appropriate to what you're doing, and a consideration would be like you're going to this French university. Do they teach the subject that you're doing in your degree? So there's a lot of different factors there, but absolutely there'll be an element of, I won't say it's totally your choice, but there's an element of working with the international degree coordinator to be sure you're placed in the right place, and your preferences would certainly count there.
Okay, thanks, David. There's a few questions in the chat that I'll just address. One's from Frank. Frank wants to know, could you give us a few numbers? How many students start each year? How many teachers, professors, how many hours do students usually do per week, both at university, studying, working on their own? Many thanks. We could follow up with Frank if you want, David, if Frank wants a more kind of in-depth.
We can follow up, absolutely, JP. I can give top line figures just because I've been dealing with this for a while. So I can give we can follow up in more detail. But off the top of my head, the intake every year is about 500. So it's a very large cohort every year, more with the BA International, but that is spread across 30 subjects. The staff student ratio is roughly about 1 to 19 at the moment, and that goes up and down slightly depending on retirements and student intake. But we've hundreds of staff, is what I'm trying to say. And in terms of hours per week, it does vary a little bit. So as I mentioned, languages and archaeology a couple of times. Languages a little more because you need a lot of classroom contact hours. Archaeology similar with fieldwork, and geography with fieldwork, you're out and about. But I would say, and Orla and Alicia might come in on this in terms of your lived experience, but I think you're looking between 15 and 20 hours of classroom contact a week. And then that trends downward throughout the degree, because you're spending more time doing independent study. I always say to students, like, we don't have labs in our college as much. We have some, but for us, the library is your lab. That's where you should be going, right? So the more time in the degree you spend, by the end, there's less time in the classroom and more actually in the library working. So that's roughly what we're looking at. So the contact hours are a little bit lower than in the sciences, but then they spend all day in labs, and we, in theory, spend all day reading books. That's kind of how we break it down. That's a rough sense. I don't know if Alicia wants to come in as a current student and give her perspective, or as a graduate, but it's roughly my perspective on it.
Yeah, that's my take on it as well. During first year, you have like first my like sociology degree, we had a lot of like tutorials, and in economics as well, we had like tutorials for like every module, and there's a lot of time in class. But then as the years went on, we have certainly less time in class, but most of that time is spent in the library studying or doing the readings or, assignments. So it's the same workload throughout the degree.
Thanks, Alicia. Maeva Hearn has a question. Can you do a master's in criminology from Arts CK101? If so, what subjects would you recommend if this was the route you were thinking of going?
Thanks, JB. And actually, thankfully, I had 30 seconds to check the catalogue on this to be sure I'm not wrong. And you absolutely can. And what they do call out, though, is they do say like that they would say certain subjects, for instance, would be very useful. So sociology is an obvious one because that's very closely related to criminology. History, applied social studies, law, politics, psychology. These are things they look at. So I would always check with the master's program themselves. But I would say if you're in that rough space, they would absolutely look at you and consider you. But I would suggest if you're thinking about that as a master's program, think about subjects that are close to criminology that would fit. And certainly sociology is the very obvious one, but there are others as well.
Okay, thank you, David. There doesn't appear to be any further questions, so I think we can wrap it up. So look, to everyone, we've come to the end of tonight's webinar for UCC's Bachelor of Arts programme. For those attending, I hope you found it informative regarding the contents of the degree, as well as the diverse range of career opportunities it has to offer. Thank you to everyone for attending, and I especially want to thank Dr. David Fitzgerald, Alicia Rogers, and Orla Murphy for giving up their time to present. So just to let you know, I will follow up with some of you regarding feedback on tonight's event. Hopefully I will see some of you around campus next year as Bachelor of Arts students. So in the meantime, good evening to you all, and thank you again for attending.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.